Children in the mines, bread that's more sawdust than it is bread,
No idea.
and getting your arms chopped off by mediocre doctors. These are all the beautiful attractions of the ice crater city known as New London, a hub of life that lets you experience what it would be like to survive an Arctic apocalypse. And I've been put in charge of this town. In the middle of town, there's a rather large heat generator, which single-handedly is keeping us alive. However, the generator is powered by coal, which means we'll have to start gathering that as soon as possible. But standing out in the open next to the generator probably isn't going to keep us warm for long. So we'll have to also start gathering some nearby driftwood in the hopes of building a place to lay our heads. Unfortunately, we found out very quickly that we didn't have enough workers to do all these jobs, and we're brought to our first realization. A majority of our colony is unemployed, because a majority of it is useless children. And as the leader of New London, my first act of Congress will be legalizing child labor.
That's what I've been waiting for.
With some of the wood we gathered, I'll also build a couple hunters' huts which should help us plan for the future and increase our food supply. And with the leftover wood, I'll finally address the big red glaring button at the bottom of my screen by putting in some tents. Later that day, one of our citizens came up to me and informed me that she had left her family behind, which in my opinion is not my problem. But as the leader, I agreed to help her look for them, which apparently entails a lot of work. First, I have to build a research facility, research a balloon, build the balloon, and then we can look for her family. In the meantime, I decided to build a fighting arena in the hopes that people will kill each other and reduce the amount of mouths we need to feed. Pretty soon after, we were able to put in our first coal mine, which I'm going to put right over here by this pile of coal. Or I guess not. Apparently I can't put it down there. I can put it down anywhere that isn't coal. I guess I'm an idiot. Obviously the coal mine doesn't go on the coal pile. Either way, with our coal mine finally in, we shouldn't have to worry about the weather too much, and I can start to address the other issues in our city, like what to do with our dead people. In this society, funerals are too expensive and a waste of time. So I've decided to bury everyone's loved ones out in the open in some nearby snowbanks. This, of course, made my people very happy. But to be honest, I don't plan on burying that many people. Instead, I will focus on our real-time healthcare to try and keep them out of the grave. Just in time, too, as I've been asked by the people to open more centers. I've also decided to research a better form of shelter than the basic tents to try and prevent sickness to begin with. Outside of town, the scouts I sent out earlier finally found the family that woman had mentioned earlier. Once escorted back to the storm, they would be able to reunite with their families. But more importantly, we would have more people to put back to work.
Pick it up, people! We're enslaved here to do a job!
The scouts also managed to find some rare resources on an additional trip and brought home our first steam core, which can be used for advanced technologies later down the road. Because our scouts had done such a great job, I decided to celebrate by signing in our very first local pub, where our residents can drink and party. And just in case things go south, I made sure to put the pub next to the fighting arena in the hopes that they can handle it themselves. Back outside the city, the scouts continued to scour the surrounding land, where they ran into a pack of wild bears. And after a long contemplation, I ultimately decided to fight the bears. Worst case scenario, there's 5 less people I have to take care of, but best case scenario, I'm rewarded, which is exactly what happened. Not only that, but on their way home, the scouts made a small detour and found themselves in the presence of a steam-powered giant, an automaton, a creature that would single-handedly change our society, as they can run an entire workplace by themselves and operate it 24 hours a day. However, there was no point in having an automaton if there was no one for it to take care of, which is what will happen if I continue to ignore my housing issues. All 39 of our homeless people had been sleeping in the cold, and now all 39 were sick. Surprisingly though, they only demanded a clinic. No one asked for a house. Either way, I agreed to build them a clinic and also went ahead and built them some homes as well. Of course, just as I start fixing things up around here, this dying asshole decides to show up. He's lucky we even let him into our colony, but to thank us, he decides to kill the vibe by saying we're the only people left alive and that we're basically screwed, which of course made everyone else lose hope and begin to question my leadership. This meant that we were going to have to double down on our leadership and develop some sort of organization that the people could depend upon. The question was, do we create a police squad and a prison, or do we invent a fake god to convince people to work? Inventing your own fake religion in order to take advantage of people has never ended poorly for anyone else, right? Unfortunately, some people saw right through that, and immediately created their own cult to protest against me, known as the Londoners. They plan on preying on my unhappy citizens to convince them to join them on their mass exodus to the old London, starting with the people in their neighborhood. I mean, that's fine. You know, I'm over here researching better ways to provide food for people, and like I found this sick-ass robot, but okay, sure. Listen to the maniacs in the street who say I suck. Oh god, they took me serious. They listened to the maniacs in the street. Well, you forced my hand, Londoners. Mandatory prayers every night spreading the gospel of how great I am. I don't care if it is a religion I made up 2 days ago that I conveniently created just as soon as people were starting to get upset and wanted to leave. It's a real religion and everyone's forced to join it. If the people in my own city won't join my religion, then I'll continue to send out my scouts to look for fresh blood that we can indoctrinate before the Londoners get their hands on them. I just hope we're able to turn it around in time, because the Londoners have now taken to the streets to begin graffitiing their messages around town. To increase my political standings, I decided to rescue 34 children in an attempt to pull at the heartstrings of my citizens. Even though their presence would be mostly useless, causing me more homelessness and starvation, I needed the publicity stunt to win the people over. But unfortunately, the tales of the children I saved would take another day to get back to town, which meant that back home, the graffiti continued. I attempted to send a cleric to break up the crowd, but the Londoners beat the cleric nearly to death. In order to find the criminals who did this, I legalized snitching in an attempt to expose these villains so we could punish them. This seemed to put their nonsense at bay, as the Londoners failed to recruit anyone that night. For the first time ever, people weren't convinced that they were better. But then the next morning I forgot to turn the heater on, and everyone got very mad at me. Apparently I promised I would keep them warm. Oops. This meant that people went back to committing crimes like stealing food, which I was forced to ignore because I had not yet instituted any form of law enforcement, since I was trying to avoid that from the beginning. But once again, the Londoners had forced my hand. I would have to sign the Faith Keepers into existence in order to create our own paramilitary religious forces. But of course, the Londoners must have seen this building under construction, and immediately took this as a sign to commit even more crimes, steal more food, and hold Londoner rallies. Somehow this reflected poorly on me, since I was quote-unquote ignoring the crimes, even though there was nothing I could do about it. So if the Londoners want to play dirty, then we'll play dirty. I will make it mandatory that everyone prays in my name as their Lord and Savior, and gathers around the town center to spread the great word of me. And should anyone disagree with these mandatory meetings, they will be punished publicly, as I'm signing in the ability to flog the non-believers. Okay, but that actually sounds kind of bad, like I'm some sort of evil god that punishes people all the time. I need a different title. Something like the Protector of Truth. Yeah, that sounds like me. So with my political campaign, religious movement sweeping the nation, the Londoners had been reduced to a mere 18, but it still wasn't over. The Londoners tried to kick me while I was down, so I'll do the same to them by sending out citizens to collect a list of the names of these Londoners and punishing them publicly. Not only that, but I'll continue to have religious parades in the town center until people accept that I am more than just the protector of truth. I'm the leader of the new world and the new faith. Everyone will be forced to adapt to our new religion, for if they do not, they will be put to the chopping block. Once our society had been properly brainwashed, loved by their god, we could finally go back to focusing on the stuff that matters. Like the 84 homeless people living in the snowdrift, 13 of which just died.
I'm doing the best at this.
But by the next morning, I had built homes for all these people and everyone was housed and relatively healthy. Those 13 people just got really unlucky. And now our generator's turning off apparently. I didn't realize we had zero coal. These stupid Londoners distracted me from the serious issues, so I guess I need to build more gathering posts and put our robot to work. But as a backup plan, I'm also going to start renovating all the homes to be more insulated in case we continue to have coal issues in the future. Not surprisingly, these couple of failures back to back seem to have made my citizens pretty upset, as they began to protest. However, I'm a humble leader and willing to admit when I've made mistakes. The best I could do now is continue to try and make decisions for the good of my people, which is why when we ran into some refugees, I refused to accept the sick ones. The healthy ones, on the other hand, were more than welcome to join, meaning we could definitely increase our coal production and get everything under control. Just in time, too, since I've been informed that there's a massive storm on its way here. Supposedly our scientists need additional tools to research this weather, but let's be honest. The storm's coming one way or another. 100 steel, 100 wood, 16 hours of my life? I know a pyramid scheme when I see one. I don't have time for this global warming mumbo jumbo. I need to address our increasingly sick population and build 2 new infirmaries, which should drastically help our numbers. Despite this, people continued to steal from me, knowing very well that the punishment was death. Most likely because they could feel that the first level of hell was on its way, because soon after that, the weather became so bad that we could no longer feed our own people, which, to be honest, I did not realize would happen. Maybe I should have listened to the scientists. Anyways, I'm sure it'll work itself out, right? I mean, we have 161 food. That should feed our 340 people. Awkward. How long is the storm? Oh, like 5 days. That'll be fine. That'll be fine. Well, our food situation is basically unsalvageable, so I guess the only other thing I can work on is our coal production, since our coal supply is flashing a beautiful red color right now, which I'm pretty sure is a bad thing. I decided to build 2 more automatons with the hope that we could operate the coal mines even in the crazy winter while the rest of my citizens hunker down. And with 4 days left of the storm, all I could do was pass the time. Unfortunately, even that didn't last long, as the next day, our generator was no longer warming the people of our town, forcing me to put it in overdrive, where it produces more heat but runs the risk of exploding. Luckily, I was already researching better home insulation and could begin researching higher power output for the generator. These 2 upgrades let us last another 2 days, but after that we were hit with another killing blast of wind. Once again, I had to engage overdrive and risk the explosion of our generator just to save our people. And with 117 of my citizens sick, things were beginning to look bleak. And I looked back wondering if what I had done was right. Should I really have become God? Was putting children to work worth it? Or was I a horrible person? Never mind, just kidding. I take everything I said back. I'm the greatest. I deserve to be God. You're welcome. Okay, all jokes aside, this game is awesome. I had a really great time running this little colony. They have this really cool end game screen here where you can watch your city be built up from the beginning in like this time lapse and tells you about stuff you did. Super cool game if you've never played it before. So if you enjoyed this video or you want to see me play Frostpunk 2 when it comes out, let me know in the comments and make sure you subscribe so you can be there. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great day.